what are some of the things we can do, like leading up to middle school or during middle school, that I mean, we don't want, obviously, we don't want to label our kids. We don't want to assume things. We want to maintain, that's what we talk about in mindful parenting, is like that attitude of kindness and curiosity. We also talk about the idea of whose problem is it? you know, is this your problem or is this your child's
Right.
problem? And then just kind of being in that place of the helper and as if it's a child's problem. So what can we do, Judith?
Well, I think there's so much of what you said that I want to respond to. I think mindfulness is very much at the core of what I think is the most important thing we can do, which is to be aware of when we're getting triggered ourselves
Mm,
and when our own emotions are on the line and are driving the way we respond and we parent. Because that usually means that we're sort of off kilter, off balance if our emotions are coming up too strongly, and that we need to take a moment and reset before we talk about anything with our kids. And so often something will happen at school that's painful. The kid goes back. It's usually the mom. I mean, it shouldn't just be, but usually is. That they're just in knots all day long waiting, and then see them after school and say, like, what happened today? And the kid had moved on and forgotten about it, so you don't want to go digging in and sort of making something last longer. And the other thing is knowing your limits. I mean, I actually think, yeah, in a certain sense, our social skills are better developed. I don't think they're as well developed as we tend to think when it comes to
probably.
dealing with the problems of middle school,
Yeah.
because nobody really helped us by and large at that point. So I think very often we don't have the tools to be able to help them in a productive way. But people who work in schools, who work with these kids, do, or at least should. And, if you're fortunate enough to be in a school that isn't too huge and where, too under resourced, they are watching, they're seeing what's going on, and they're able to talk to the kids in a way that meets them where they are developmentally and that also isn't taking sides. I mean, we will naturally, I think, take our children's side. Um, whereas what they really need is to be able to expand their point of view to understand that there are different sides, which doesn't excuse bad behavior, doesn't excuse meanness. Um, but if they're going to basically be able to empower themselves in a situation, they have to be able to see that they're not pure victims. And
Mhm.
I think that in our sympathy, our enormous sympathy and love for our kids, we very often tend to kind of, dwell on their victimhood
Mm.
rather than thinking about, okay, well, this sucks. What can you do? What could you do? If we can serve in a kind of problem solving role and come to it, I think, as you said, with curiosity. So ask questions, but lightly ask
Mhm.
questions, and then be able to stay with our own distress, because if they're having problems, it is going to cause us enormous distress. It simply is, and we're going to have to be able to tolerate it, basically, rather than get carried away with it and captivated by it to the point that we can't think clearly like adults and bring more of an adult, calm, mature mind to the situation.
Yeah, and if we're getting carried away by our own distress of their situation, we can't be that grounding home base that our kids
Exactly.
need if they are in distress. Like when my 14-year-old, she does all the like in her room time, alone time, but sometimes she comes and flops on my bed at night, and out comes a bunch of stuff. And it's, if I'm in a place of distress at everything, and I can't be that I can't have a steady heart, a steady mind, a steady nervous system to be able to hold that, then I'm not really being of use to her or helping.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, if you go just down to the level where she is and amplify the distress, then again, you can't help her settle. You can't help her sort of settle enough to be able to think clearly, process things, and figure out what she might do if there's something that needs to be done. Also, I think, as parents, we tend to be incredibly judgmental and to express those judgments at an age when the kids are already very judgmental of themselves above all, but also of each other. And that doesn't help. If you're judgmental, they're not going to tell you anything. So
Mhm.
you have to be able to create the space in which they can say things, you can actively listen, and you can ask them if they want help thinking
Mm,
about what to do,
mm,
or how they want to go about trying to make it better.
mm. I appreciate the way you said that. Ask them if they want help rather than just jump in with the unsolicited advice.
Yeah, I mean, in an interview, I can say all the right things. In real life, it's something else. You know.
Yeah, well,
But then
that's
I wish I had known when my daughters were that age, the things that I know now from having done this research. I didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't really, I mean, I realized in retrospect, I didn't really have tools beyond whatever I had been left with at that age. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, obviously, but not that much.
yeah, we tend to not to think that we shouldn't have to invest in these kinds of tools. Like that's what we teach in mindful parenting. We teach how to ground yourself and how to be present and how to process your feelings mindfully and then also how to communicate. And it's like these are we just don't think that we should have to learn those things. You know what I mean? Like we just think that we should have those things innate in us innately if we choose to, which is I don't know. It's
But
just
we
part of the
don't. I
human
mean, it's a
condition.
practice. It's
Mhm.
something that you have to practice. It doesn't come naturally. Our what comes naturally for most of us, or many of us at least, especially when it concerns our kids, is for our emotions to just kind of run wild. I mean, and that's what's so funny. Parents so often, when I was saying I was working on a book about the middle school phase of life, they would just say like raging hormones and kind of run away with this idea that the kids are so out of control. I mean, sure, they are pretty emotional at that age, but so are we. So are we when they're going through that period of life. So
Mm,
I
mm.
just think, sometimes you have to think about like whose mood swings are happening, whose strong emotions are being vented.
Yeah, yeah, we tend to wanna, like, control everybody else's feelings so that we
Mhm.
feel regulated, and that's not a terribly effective strategy.
No,
But we want so, okay, we wanna be practicing these things, we wanna be grounded, we wanna be able to be reflective, we wanna be able to not take on that problem and be a grounded, stable helper for our kids if they have a problem. Is there anything else we can do to help our kids kinda go through this time unscathed?
I do think that we need to be able to identify some school adults who our kids feel close to and who they believe kind of sees things for what they are, because I think very often kids feel like the adults just don't get it. They don't see what's going on. And sometimes that's true. And sometimes the adults really do see what's going on and they see it in real time. And they can find ways to help the kids, as opposed to just kind of casting blame. See what's going on in the dynamics, see what's going wrong in communication, in skill level, I mean, you have different kinds of social skill stuff that come to play at that age, and some kids are just much further along than others. Some of them need help, they're not self-aware. And if they have somebody who's sort of with them 8 hours a day or whatever it is, who is able to see what they're doing that isn't good and can point it out, not
Mhm.
judgmentally, just kind of, are you really happy with the way that interaction went? Do you think it could be done differently? That can be hugely helpful. And so talking to the teachers, if we know that there's a problem, can be a really positive thing to do, not demanding some kind of punishment for another kid. Just saying, there's this problem, it's happening at school. Would you mind taking a look and seeing if you can help them along? It tends to be appreciated. I think that that's very, very important. I think to the extent to which we can get our kids to kind of widen their view of how they're perceiving the world. So
Mm.
they are not just narrowly seeing it through the lens of kind of what they want, what they need, where they are, how they're feeling, but widen out to be able to take in the perspectives of others and understand that other people have their own life stories kind of churning in the background, and that sometimes when people act a certain way, it doesn't have to do with you, it has to do with what's going on with them. I just think it will help empower them. It'll help them think about ways to feel better in a given situation. I mean, to go around just feeling like so and so hates me and I don't know why is awful. I mean, that's the kind of thing you then carry forward through life. But having the vocabulary to be able to think, oh, our friendship is changing maybe because we're kind of moving in different directions and have different interests right now. Um, Maybe it's better for me since I don't feel good around her and her friends to see if there are other people whose company I enjoy more right now because I have more in common with them. That's a lot better than just feeling like, oh my God, my friend dumped me and that won't tell me why. So I think that it's ways like that by giving them a vocabulary where they can kind of understand themselves and their world. Again, lightly, not, nickel, all with an eye to making them feel like they have some agency is really, really important.
Catch new episodes of the Mindful Mama podcast and other free resources, including the Mindful Mom Guide at mindfulmamamentor.com. You can listen to every back catalog episode, including interviews with Dr. Dan Siegel, Ianla Van Zant, Sharon Salzberg, and get meditations, join our private Facebook group, and more. Go to mindfulmamamentor.com now. I'll see you there.